Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what time you are watching this video. I am Ruben Ramos, professor, and this is another asynchronous class on superhero comic books in nowadays society. On our last class, we have stopped on Scott McCloud's chapter 5, and I do believe we have stopped on this comic book sequence. So let's move on from this one. In dealing with the face itself, the line between the visible and invisible worlds becomes even less clear. The cartoon face is an abstract, but it is based upon visual data. Some indicators of emotion are also visually based, such as the familiar sweat bead. But when such images begin to drift out of their visual context, they drift into the invisible world of the symbol. This drift from visible to invisible has been the basis of all written languages since civilization began. Sumerians in ancient Mesopotamia got things rolling over 5,000 years ago when a need was found to record certain commodities. As we have examples over here, the number of oxes or the number of grain, how much grain in this case they used to have or accumulate during a certain period of time. These first symbols, cartoons really, gradually evolved away from any resemblance to their subject toward the highly abstracted forms of modern languages, and eventually to our totally abstract sound-based system. The longer any form of art or communication exists, the more symbols it accumulates. The modern comic is a young language, but it already has an impressive array of recognizable symbols. And this visual vocabulary has an unlimited potential for growth. Within a given culture, these symbols will quickly spread until everybody knows them at a glance. But what happens when a language evolves in more than one distinct culture at a time? The answer, of course, is that more than one set of symbols will evolve. So it was once again in Japan, where comics developed for years in relative isolation from their Western cousins. This in Japan is common for anger, for dementia, for sleep, and lust. Very different from the Western civilization and Western comic book themselves. Backgrounds can be another valuable tool for indicating invisible ideas, particularly the world of emotions. Even when there is little or no distortion of the characters in a given scene, a distorted or expressionist background will usually affect our reading of characters' inner states, and we can pretty much check it out over here. We may read those two frames separately, but if we read them as a comic book from left to right, we will figure out that there is something going on with the character, and the character might be experiencing some delusion or dizziness or hypnosis, and maybe it is growing up in a bigger proportion with him. This could be one example, among others. Certain patterns can produce an almost physiological effect in the viewer. I don't know about you guys, but every time I see this one, I feel like it's extremely hot. Like the I'm not sure if that's the name, but in Portuguese, translating to English, we would have a thermical feeling or thermical sensation of a very warm, a very hot day, like a summer day without the breeze, that everything seems to be melting around us. Pretty much a Goiânia day throughout the year, or a day in Goiânia if you prefer. But for some reason, readers will ascribe those feelings not to themselves, but to the characters they identify with. And here, MacLeod establishes a very nice connection that we as readers can and undoubtedly establish with the characters that we most identify ourselves with. We have that power to attribute the feeling to another person, in this case a character, but to which we identify with by some reason, familiarity, a parallel, something that he represents to us, good or bad. Such internal effects are, of course, best suited to stories about internal matters. When a story hinges more on characterization than code plot, there may not be a lot to show externally, but the landscape of the characters' minds can be quite a sight. This principle is evident in many European color comics and in Japanese romance comics, where expressionistic effects have been devised for almost any emotion imaginable. Expressionism and synesthetics are distortive by their nature. If strong enough, their effects can obscure their subjects. But a lack of clarity can also foster greater participation by the reader and a sense of involvement, which many writers and artists prefer. Every time that I look into this one here, I think about Sandman that fall from Spider-Man in Spider-Man 3, the movie, but better even saying on comics. It's almost his effect, and I think Spider-Man feels exactly like this when he has to face Sandman. He sees a human form, a humanoid form, in a sandstorm when he faces that guy. Creators who use these effects may need to clarify what is being shown. However, in this one here, I always remember the Human Torch. To me, it would be a Human Torch effect, almost when he's in the middle of his supernova, which is the highest intense of his powers. Either through the content of surrounding scenes or, of course, through words. By far, the most widely used, most complex, and most versatile of comics' many synesthetic icons is the ever-present, ever-popular word balloon. Over the years, comics creators have struggled with dozens of variations in their desperate attempts to depict sound in a strictly visual medium. Variations in balloon shape are many, and new ones are being invented every day. I will be R. It's so quiet. Oh, it's you. Timber, Zacker. While inside those balloons, symbols are constantly being appropriated or even invented to cover the non-verbal. In here, for example, would be somebody snoring during his or her sleep. In here would be somebody cursing with bad mouth and bad language. Here would be obviously a question. Here would be a clever thought. Here would be a window face, as we call like that. In Portuguese would be something like cara de paisagem, or as British say, smile and nod. It's like I have no clue what that person is talking about, or neither do I care, but I have to pay attention. Even the variations of lettering styles, both in and out the balloons, speak of an ongoing struggle to capture the very essence of sound. Crash, tip tip, bring, ha ha, whoomp, crack, la di 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 da, click. Maybe I don't even want shrimp for dinner. And as for the essence of thought, of course, words themselves, more than all the other visual symbols, have the power to completely describe the invisible realm of senses and emotions. Words can take even seemingly neutral images and invest them with a wealth of feelings and experiences. I sat by the open window, hoping to catch a whiff of the old charcoal grills. From next door came the otherworldly hum of television. The old clock struck a lazy 8. As noted, pictures can induce strong feelings in the reader, but they can also lack the specificity of words. Words, on the other hand, offer that specificity, but can lack the immediate emotional charge of pictures, relying instead on a gradual cumulative effect. I just want you to know that I'm on to your plot. I know you put something in my dog's food that made him not love me anymore. And together, of course, words and pictures can work miracles. But we'll get to that in the next chapter. Perhaps it's too much to ask of one sense that it be responsible for conveying such a wide world of experiences. But we make that process work by bringing the full power of our own experiences to bear on the world our eyes report. In this chapter, we've dealt with the invisible worlds of senses and emotions, but in fact, all aspects of comics show it to be an art of the invisible, as we can pretty much see over here in these various examples. What you see is seldom what you get if all you are seeing even now, is just ink and paper. In the end, what you get is what you give. And in my personal opinion, this is MacLeod's attempt to establish a parallel. Hold on a minute. Let me turn off this phone here, sorry. Okay, MacLeod's attempt to establish a parallel between the comic book readers and the non-comic book readers. How so? In his opinion, if you grasp his concept, there are several levels, different levels, on a person to be a comic book enthusiast or not. This would have strictly to go with his or her ability to view a world and its perspectives on comics. So, when he eloquently puts that in the end, what you get is what you give, is the much you can give as the reader to fully understand what's going on in the frames and in their relation as a comic book, the better or the more you'll get. But some people who might be against comics, they start to see them pretty much with the view that we have over the last 3 frames on this chapter. And that maybe that's the reason why it doesn't make any sense to them as a valid kind of reader, or valid kind of reading, I'm sorry. And with that, we conclude chapter 5. I will make the critical essay available for you. And on our next class, we start chapter 6. Thank you so much for listening. See you next time. Bye bye.